everyone. Before we jump into our next topic today, we're going to do a short review of the Earth system. So I hope you all remember the names of the 4 spheres that we learned about last week. First, we're going to just let you kind of remember all of the spheres yourself. So I want you to identify the spheres each numbered part belongs to. And I'll give you a minute to do this. You can pause the video and then discuss as a class or just individually figure out the spheres. But for now, we're going to go over the answers. So the number 1 there is referring to the air, that nice blue sky, and that is the atmosphere. Number 2 is the water, the nice Atlantic Ocean there, and that refers to the hydrosphere. Number 3 is in the bottom left corner of the image. It is where all of the rocks are on that shore, and that is the geosphere. And finally, we have number 4 over there on the right, and that's on the plants and trees that in the summer would look a little more green, but they are still parts of the biosphere. So those are all of the spheres we went over last week, and we hope that this helps you to remember some of those spheres, and we're going to come back to these throughout our season with you all.
All right, so now we're going to get a little bit more specific about one of our spheres, the biosphere, and we are going to talk about habitats, ecosystems, and biomes. So first, we want to ask you guys a question. We want to know, what do living things need in order to survive? So you guys can go ahead and pause the video and discuss as a class, or just think about it, and we'll come back to that in just a second. So some of the answers that we came up with first was food. As you can see, this cute little guy represents the food that we all need to survive. We need water, which helps us to survive also, gives us energy. We need shelter. As you can see, this squirrel's nest in the tree keeps the squirrel safe from all of the other elements within our biosphere. And then there's space, which helps us find the resources that we need to survive, like the food and the water and the supplies that are needed to create a shelter.
So a habitat is defined as a home for wildlife, and it needs those 4 things: food, water, shelter, and space. Basically, home for an animal is like your neighborhood, in that it has all of the things that you need to survive. So it's got your house, and it's also got a grocery store where you got food, and it's got a water source. Yours comes out of the faucet usually, and so on. Here we see an example of a porcupine's habitat, which is right near our home here in Bear Brook. So you can see at the left a bigger picture, and then on the right a more zoomed in picture of a hole in the pile of rocks that a porcupine calls home. So it can go in there every night to feel safe, and we see it coming and going sometimes.
Okay, so now it's your turn again. We're going to ask that you all draw a map of your homes, including the things that are important to you. So some examples might be maybe a place where you have your favorite games, food, different things like that. And after you finish your drawing, you can share with your class and maybe discuss the things that are similar to each other's drawings as a class. Before you get started though, we'll give you some examples so that you can kind of know the direction we're going with this activity. So for example, this is Jackson's home, and you can see all of the things that were important to him. This is my home, and here is Rita's house. So I'll give you a minute. You can pause the video to draw your own maps. The thing that you can see between all of our houses is that there are similarities. For example, we all have our rooms, which give us space to be alone and to just, live our lives. We also have kitchens, which give us the food that we need and the water. And finally, our houses give us the shelter we need as part of our habitats. So now I hope that you can see how your habitat is similar and different to an animal's habitat.
All right, so now we also want you guys to discuss the different places where animals might live. and you can list the different things that you would find in those habitats that would help animals and plants survive, kind of like how we just mentioned food and water and shelter.
So we hope that you were able to think of some good examples of things that help animals survive in their different habitats. Here we have some examples of different types of habitats that you see in New Hampshire. We have the coastal region, so this is the Atlantic coast over on the eastern side of New Hampshire. We have lakes and ponds. Here you can see Spruce Pond, which is right where we live in Bear Brook. We have an alpine region, which is, this here is in the White Mountains. And we have hardwood pine forest, and you can find these throughout New Hampshire. There are also many other types of habitats in New Hampshire, but these are just a small selection of a few of them.
Okay, so now we're going to go on to ecosystems. And an ecosystem is any area where living creatures such as plants and animals interact with non-living things like soil, water, temperature, and air. And ecosystems can be as big as an ocean or as small as a backyard. And you can see in this image, we have the non-living rocks and the living plants and the bunny interacting with the weather throughout that larger ecosystem. So if you're thinking about, what the difference is between habitats and ecosystems, we have habitats as a smaller basic needs of an organism, and the ecosystem is the larger interactions that go on and include much more than just a habitat does.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about biomes. A biome is just one step bigger than an ecosystem. It is a large community of plants and animals that's made up of smaller ecosystems. They help us to divide the earth by environmental conditions. Those conditions can be what types of plants will grow there, what types of animals live there, the climate or the weather patterns, and the soil type. So there are 5 different types of biomes. And so we have some pictures of each type. There's the forest biome. There's the aquatic biome, which is just water. There is the desert biome and the tundra biome. And finally, the grasslands biome.
So all of those biomes are super interesting, but because here in New Hampshire, we live in the forest biome, we're going to focus in on that one. So it includes a large different number of types of plants and animals, but is mostly characterized by the large amounts of trees you see. So it can include forests like you see here in New Hampshire with pine trees and maples and beeches, but also can include tropical rainforests that have an entirely different selection of trees and animals that live there. So a question that we have for you is, what animals do you think you can find in a forest biome? And we can give you a hint, and that is any animal you can find in New Hampshire, you can find in a forest biome.
So how does this all fit together? So we've talked about habitats, and we know that a habitat is a place where an individual plant or animal will live so that they can collect their resources and survive. And then we know that an ecosystem is made up of a bunch of different habitats combined with all of the non-living things that would be there, such as the rocks and the soil and the type of weather that you would encounter there. And then we go one step further when we talk about biomes, which is just a connection of all of those different ecosystems, which will end up making up our whole biosphere, which, as you guys know, makes up all of the living things that we find here on Earth.
So to put all of this into perspective, we are going to talk about everybody's favorite, the beaver. So beavers live here in New Hampshire, as well as many other places, but they live in a forest biome and an aquatic habitat. So beavers do this unique thing where they build dams. So you can see one here. How they do this is they chop down trees with their mouths, and they drag the trees and find sticks and just pile them up and build dams. And in doing that, they increase the size of the pond, and so they also increase the size of their habitat. That makes beavers a lot like humans because both of them significantly change their habitats to suit their needs. So humans do that by building houses and making landscaping, but beavers do that by building dams. And in doing that, they create aquatic ecosystems. Both humans and beavers also have homes with entrances and places for food and rests. With beavers, we call those lodges and dens, which are protected by the dams. And humans can live in houses and apartments and many other types of things. Both humans and beavers have food at home, with beavers having food piles stored close to the lodge. And both humans and beavers will move based on their needs. So when a beaver's food supply runs out, it will move to a new pond.
Okay, so now we're going to give you a chance to make your own observations this week to explore for yourself. So individually or as a class, go ahead and check out some of the live nature streams that have kind of become our favorites here at Bear Brook. You can see them linked below. We have brown bears in Katmai, Alaska, bald eagles in Catalina, California, and red foxes here in New Hampshire. So you can use the Find My Habitat sheet to make some observations about what you see, or of course you can just write them down on a scrap of paper, whatever works best for you. Just want to keep in mind though that these are live cameras, and that since animals do not follow our schedules, they might not appear in the cameras at the times that you choose to watch them. So we hope you see something here today, but as always, you have to just kind of hope for the best.
All right, so now that you guys have looked at your live cameras, I want you to take about 5 minutes to answer the questions that we have for you. And our questions are, how is your home similar to an animal's habitat? So kind of like what we did with the beaver, we want you guys to think about maybe some other animals that you could find similarities with in how we live and find our resources. And our next question is, how is your community similar to an ecosystem? So like we mentioned, how in ecosystems, it's a connection of different habitats and living and non-living things. So how is our community similar to that in how we find our resources and how we all work together to survive?
So that wraps up our lesson for this week. We hope that you all have enjoyed learning about habitats and ecosystems and biomes. And we are going to end our lesson, like we will every week, with the Earth Stewardship Pledge. So we are all going to say it, and we will also hope you remember the motions that go along with it. And please follow along after us. I pledge to care about the world around me, to investigate and explore the world around me, to share my learning and do service, to make the world around me a better place for plants, animals, and people. I carry this commitment with me always. I am an Earth Steward.